Welcome back. Well, this is the first chapter of our special series devoted to a rediscovery of India. The other two chapters will be about political institutions in India, whether they are the competitive edge or the other way around for the future of your country, the largest neighboring country of China. And the last chapter is about the so-called dragon-elephant geoeconomic and geopolitical rivalry in Asia. Now, let's look at the other alleged vulnerabilities that Prime Minister Modi faces. Local business leaders in your country, Atul, quietly grumbled that there is no dynamism on the ground, little consumer demand, much infrastructure such as wobbly roads and slow freight trains needs improving, to say nothing of the indebted banks, state-run and vulnerable to political meddling. And they won't land without reform. What do you make of their grievances?
Look, there is an acute shortage of infrastructure in India. If we have to grow now from, say, 7 to 10%, which is the aspiration, without quality infrastructure, which means rail, roads, ports, power, without that we can't make it. It's absolutely clear.
Look,
what has happened is, with Modi coming in, Modi is trying to create that framework. I think it's too harsh to judge a person who comes to power only in 2014. So, but what he has done is, and what you were mentioning earlier, is creating that framework, whether it's financial inclusion, whether it is the institutions which will lay down the infrastructure, the blueprint for the rise of India through foreign capital investment, because as you mentioned, banks are a big problem. They're not lending, so we need foreign capital to do basic things right now. So, you're creating that framework, but I think he can be judged only after he completes, say, at least a decade and see the results. It's too harsh to judge him right now, and these are the teething problems which will happen when a reformer comes into play. And the great grievances which are coming up.
And I do believe foreign direct investment will most likely replace the lending from homegrown banking industry, the alleged flawed banking industry in India.
Well, no, the banks in India are not in good shape. They have very similar problems in many ways to China in terms of zombie companies that no one will force down because they don't want to take a write down on the loans themselves. So they just keep them going. In terms of foreign capital, I mean, Mauritius, Singapore, then the US and UK are the four largest providers of capital coming in, infrastructure, but it's not enough. It's a drop in the bucket. Now, here's the interesting thing that I would posit. The key to the future of Modi's India and his vision is actually quite in line with the Belt and Road Initiative. What does the Belt and Road offer? It offers infrastructure. Not only does it offer the expertise to do it, but it offers the capital, the investment to do it. A road through India would be very, very interesting because it would present an opportunity to China to push through an area that would be relatively safer than some of its other routes and might actually help solve some of the issues between Pakistan and India. So there are opportunities here. So when you say that he's a novice, I think there are opportunities that could settle a lot of things, even border disputes. If a much larger discussion
here is the most interesting issue of mistrust between the two largest economies in Asia due to the history of border disputes as well as Dalai Lama, for example. Now, what do you think of the Belt and Road Initiative that our President Xi Jinping put forward 4 years ago? Why Prime Minister Modi was absent from the summit meeting that our President Xi Jinping presided a couple of months back in Beijing? Was it because only of the Kashmir, the land of control, the Sino-Pakistan economic corridor?
Yeah, I totally agree that for the Belt and Road Initiative, it's really an opportunity for India, especially the India Modi government. He puts the infrastructure and also the manufacturing as the two pillars of his economic vision. So I think in this sense, actually, the Belt and Road Initiative can play a role in the Indian economic growth, but it's really concern from the Indian side. I think that is because of the the mistrust between the two countries. And also, of course,
Are you sure, Artu, your
Yeah.
Prime Minister will be coming to attend the BRICS summit in Xiamen, coastal city of Fujian province, so that the two leaders, our President Xi Jinping and your Prime Minister, will be able to meet and have a real interesting indoor discussion on the sidelines?
I think he is going to come.
He's
There are
going to
no signs at all. Given the
Despite the
preparatory
current
work which
border
is going,
standoff,
despite the
despite the
probably,
standoff.
in fact, the preparations are going on full swing, let me put it that way. So that is going to happen. And I think it's a great opportunity for the two leaders to meet because the agenda is big now. But I think there is also a necessity to create some new institutions. What has happened is the India-China strategic dialogue was anchored in the late 80s when Rajiv Gandhi came over here and the early 90s when we have confidence building measures on the border. But both countries have changed. China has transformed itself. It's a different country with logical, rational interests beyond its borders because of its economic rise, as is India, which also occupies a great geocultural space right up to the ASEAN countries. But there is no framework for these two countries to talk out their interests. Of course, China will get into Nepal or Sri Lanka, just as India is going to get into Southeast Asia. But then where do we talk all this out that, okay, what are your interests, what are mine, and we come to a modus vivendi and understand each other. I think this meeting which takes place in Xiamen, if it gives us an opportunity to create an institutional framework where two aspirational countries can talk out their concern and reduce the mutual trust, that will be a great contribution because I'm afraid we may resolve Doklam. There is nothing, no framework to prevent another Doklam from happening. So we have a big agenda. If we are going to, realize the potential of what you were mentioning earlier of the Belt and the Road and others.
Artu, Anna, and Lily, we certainly expect to have an impressive breakthrough coming out of the summit between Mr. Xi Jinping and Mr. Modi on sidelines of the BRICS summit. However, many of the Chinese investors and nationals who are now working in your country, India, are skeptical about what's going to happen next because of the border standoff and the growing mistrust between our two countries. Look at the mad sentiments of nationalism on both sides, particularly the Indian media. You've been interviewed many times, Anna. Do you think? Yeah. So what do you think? What do you think of the mistrust?
Well, quite frankly, these are affairs of state, and they will not be settled by the media. And that's quite clear. I mean, selling copies of or trying to get people to watch your television show is not the same thing as trying to run a country. So I always posit to them, there's two things wrong with this. First off, you, the media, do not control this. Second, there is no end game to this. A war between China and India is disastrous for both. Now, there are some very positive signs. India has not withdrawn and is an active member of SCO. This is a Shanghai Cooperation Organization. They're also part of the AIIB. In fact, the chief representative from India, who is second in seniority there, is his finance minister, previously from Gujarat. This is a person who's very, very close to Modi, whom Modi trusts implicitly, and he's been placed here in China. So I do think there is groundwork for them to work together, as long as the media can be pulled back and stop this kind of yammering towards war.
So we are talking about cooperation and of course competition between the two largest economies in Asia. What can we learn from each other? I mean, what are the things about the Indian economy that we should aspire to learn? Now, there is a growing sense of complacency in China. They look down upon India. They say how they come from a low level of the economy, and China has become the second largest. Pretty soon we're going to surpass the United States. But if you look at the PPP, then we have already surpassed the United States. Now there is the sense of self-inflation shared by many of the Chinese nationals here. The issue is whether we have a lot to learn instead from India.
I think to learn from each other first, the basic thing is that we have to know each other. It's very pity that after so many years we don't know each other. I don't think we don't know each other enough.
Then what's wrong with the miscommunication at all? Do you take much of the blame as a correspondent here?
I think there are structural reasons to that. We were into two rival camps in the Cold War, and 62 happened. So, for 30 years, this relationship was frozen out. So we are beginning to get back, but I think people-to-people contact, and then the spiritual and other connections, which is so strong and powerful. I was in a place, this Dunhuang, of the Buddhist grottos, And
Yeah, Buddhism came from India.
so the power of the cultural relationship is untapped, and it's amazing. But we have not reached there. Our far history is great, but our near history is a problem, and that's something which needs to be addressed right now.
And cultural ignorance goes two ways. There are very few people in China that I know much about India, and a lot of the views they have are quite stereotypical. So it's something that has to be mutually addressed. This is one of the issues that the SCO also, the Belt and Road, addresses. This idea of having person-to-person exchanges that create cultural and linguistic understanding.
But sadly, one of the things that has been tweeted is a call by a very famous yoga master in India who appeals for preparations for war and a showdown with China. But that has really upset the Chinese who have been driven mad by yoga, which also comes from India. Thank you very much for being part of this meaningful dialogue. This is only the first chapter of our special series devoted to a rediscovery of India, our very important neighboring country and a very competitive economy under the leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. I'll see you tomorrow at the same time. Until then, goodbye.